She could scarcely fathom it. The human was dining on the planet's apex predator. The crimson sun threw elongated shadows across the alien terrain as Lieutenant Jake Hunter tore another succulent piece of expertly roasted flesh from the large leg bone. Juice trickled along his chin, and he brushed it aside with the back of his hand, relishing the robust flavor. The beast had put up a monumental fight, but ultimately, like every other challenge on this forsaken world, it had come to learn that humans were not to be trifled with. His campfire crackled cheerfully, sending embers spiraling into the purple-tinged sky. The rest of the creature, easily the size of a small elephant, was slowly roasting on a crude spit, the aroma of cooking meat mixing with the strange, sweet fragrance of local flora. Hunter's armor, scratched and dented from the recent skirmish, lay nearby. His black undersuit was ripped in several spots, revealing fresh cuts and bruises beneath, yet the injuries were worth it because the meat was downright phenomenal. He was just about to reach for another mouthful when motion drew his attention. Standing at the edge of his makeshift camp was, without doubt, the most striking alien he had ever witnessed. A silvery white hair caught the last of the dying sunlight, creating a kind of halo around her sharp, refined features. The sleek black armor she wore left little to the imagination, and her violet eyes were wide with what appeared to be disbelief. "By the Ancient Ones," she murmured. A translator converted her lyrical speech into standard English. What are you eating?" Hunter flashed a grin, holding up the piece of meat. "Dinner. Care to sample some? There's plenty." The alien woman, obviously a member of the Nixon species he had been assigned to observe, hesitated before stepping closer. That's a shadow stalker's leg. Is that what you call these creatures?" Hunter asked, biting off more meat. "Vicious thing tried to ambush me while I was patrolling the perimeter. I had to teach it a lesson." She advanced, her stride graceful despite her evident bewilderment. "You slew a shadow stalker by yourself. With which weapons?" Hunter motioned toward his combat knife and standard-issue plasma pistol. "Mainly these, though I'll admit there was some hand-to-hand in the mix. Nasty opponent, I'll give it that." Her voice climbed an octave. "You fought a shadow stalker in close quarters?" Well, yes," he replied. "After my plasma charges ran out. Didn't have much choice." He tapped the log beside him. "I'm Jake Hunter, by the way." "And you?" "Lieutenant Sierra Knight," she responded automatically, her gaze still fixed on the roasting meat. "I was dispatched to deliver your monthly supplies and review your status." I never expected to find you feasting on our planet's most fearsome predator." Hunter laughed, a rich, warm sound. "Fearsome, huh? Well, guess I should have taken a snapshot for the record." He lifted a perfectly cooked slice of meat. "Absolutely sure you don't want to taste? It's actually quite nice, like a cross between deer and buffalo." Sierra settled down next to him, moving carefully. "Our warriors tell legends about shadow stalkers. They hunt in packs, are reputedly impossible to slay, and have wiped out whole settlements. This one was on its own," Hunter said with a shrug. "While it sure is a challenge, calling it impossible to kill is an overstatement. Everything dies if you strike it hard enough in the correct place." Sierra watched, transfixed, as he continued devouring his meal. Her violet eyes studied each of his motions. The flames danced across his face, accentuating the fresh scrapes and the determined set of his jaw. "You're honestly not scared, are you?" she finally asked. "Scared? Of the local critters?" Hunter chuckled. "Listen, where I come from, we have beasts that would make your shadow stalker look like a lapdog. You ever heard of Australian wildlife? That's something to keep you awake at night." "But our most seasoned fighters," Sierra began. "No offense to them," Hunter interjected, "but humanity has been at the top of our own food chain for a very long time. We didn't reach that position by being gentle about it." A companionable quiet enveloped them, broken only by the snap of the fire and the sizzling of the roast. Sierra realized she was inspecting the human more thoroughly now. His easy confidence was both infuriating and strangely captivating. The way he moved, even while merely eating, hinted at contained power and unwavering faith in his capabilities. "So," Hunter said, breaking the stillness, "about those supplies." "Oh, right, yes." Sierra seemed to recall her actual objective. She gestured to the transport parked near the camp's boundary. "Usual monthly allowance, though I note you've managed to find your own source of protein." Hunter grinned, causing Sierra's heart to flutter. There was a dangerous allure in him that she found impossible to ignore. "Hey, when dinner tries to eat you first, it's only fair to return the favor," he said, rising to stretch. His muscles rippled beneath the torn fabric, and Sierra caught herself watching despite her best efforts. "Probably best if I record this," she said, attempting to keep her poise. One human single-handedly taking down a shadow stalker. The council will be eager for details. "Go ahead," Hunter said, moving to assist with the supplies. "Just know this might not be the last time something like it happens. Trouble sort of follows me." "Lieutenant Hunter, that doesn't surprise me in the slightest." The crimson sun had barely started descending when the initial signs of danger manifested. The local vegetation began swaying absent any breeze, and an uncanny hush descended over the camp. Hunter's well-honed instincts snapped into action. "Something's off," he remarked, standing smoothly. "It's too quiet out there." Sierra paused in the middle of cataloging the supplies, her refined features pinching with concern. "My atmospheric scans show a drastic pressure drop. A megastorm is advancing from the north." "That's not all," Hunter muttered, his gaze sweeping the perimeter. The hairs on his neck stood upright, the same uncanny feeling that had saved his life repeatedly. "We've got visitors." Right on cue, a low growl reverberated through the twilight, then another and another. "Shadow stalkers," Sierra whispered, her violet eyes going wide. "A whole pack. They must have caught the scent of their fallen packmate." Hunter was already moving with deadly grace. He seized his armor, quickly attaching the vital parts. "How far to your transport?" "Too far," Sierra said, trying to keep her voice level, though he saw the fear flicker in her eyes. "We'd never reach it before they overtook us." Lightning flashed, illuminating the terrain in an electric white, followed by a thunderclap that shook the ground. The storm was arriving faster than expected, accompanied by stinging, corrosive rain that would obliterate visibility. "My shelter," Hunter decided, indicating the fortified structure off to the side. "It's built to withstand storms and predators. We make a dash for it when I say." The snarls edged closer, and in the growing darkness, multiple sets of glowing eyes appeared. These shadow stalkers dwarfed Earth's biggest predators, with black scales and lethal quills along their backs. "Trust me?" Hunter asked, his hand somehow finding Sierra's. She stared at their joined hands, then up at his face. In that lethal moment, she felt a sudden exhilaration at his touch. Surprisingly, yes. "Then go." They sprinted for the shelter, moving in unison. Behind them, the pack broke cover, their thunderous steps merging with the storm's howling. Hunter and Sierra reached the door just as the first beast lunged. Hunter spun, shoving Sierra inside while unsheathing his combat knife in one seamless motion. The monster's claws scraped across his armor, but his blade struck home in its eye, bringing it down with a shriek and blocking the others momentarily. He dove in, and Sierra slammed the door, the reinforced metal rattling as the rest of the pack hurled themselves at it. "It'll hold," Hunter assured her, aware of how they now stood mere inches apart in the cramped interior. "But we might be stuck here for a bit." Sierra panted, not purely from the run. The confined space forced them practically chest to chest, and she felt his warmth radiating through the undersuit. "You saved my life," she breathed. "You would have done the same," Hunter responded softly, his intense blue eyes locked on hers. Outside, the tempest raged, and the shadow stalkers prowled. Inside, though, a different tension gathered. Sierra found herself studying the lines of his face, noticing how the emergency lights created shadows along his firm jaw, highlighting fresh battle marks. Earlier, she began breaking the charged hush. "You said humans are apex predators, but you exhibit such discipline, such self-restraint." Hunter smiled, a mix of danger and tenderness. "Being apex isn't only about raw power, it's about choosing when to strike and when to safeguard. Is that what you're doing now? Shielding me?" "Among other things." His fingers rose to brush aside a stray lock of her silver hair, the gentleness oddly at odds with the fact that minutes ago he'd slaughtered a shadow stalker bare-handed. The storm's fury crescendoed, and a fierce thunderclap made Sierra jump, pressing her even closer to him. Neither pulled away. "Your species fears these beasts," he observed quietly, "but fear isn't always rational. Sometimes the thing you believe you should dread is precisely what you require. And you, Lieutenant Hunter, what do you fear?" His eyes darkened. Losing control, wanting something, or someone too strongly. The weight of his words hovered between them, brimming with possibilities. Beyond, the shadow stalkers continued hammering the shelter in frustration, their roars mingling with the gale, but inside, an entirely different storm was gathering. Sierra found herself drawn to the contradiction in this man. Someone capable of felling her world's deadliest creature, yet who now treated her so carefully. The attraction she felt before was now morphing into something deeper, more primordial. She said, her touch skimming the fresh gash on his armor. "You're unlike anything we've encountered. So lethal, yet so human." "Intriguing," Hunter supplied, gently gripping her hand. She did not withdraw. The shelter's life support systems hummed softly, maintaining a comfortable climate despite the raging tempest, yet the air between them felt electrified. Hunter's thumb traced small, deliberate circles on her wrist, sending sparks through her. "In my experience," he said, voice rougher than it had been moments ago, "deadly circumstances clarify priorities, reminding you of what actually matters." "And what matters now?" Sierra asked, though she suspected the answer. Instead of speaking, Hunter closed the gap, his lips meeting hers lightly at first, as if seeking permission. When Sierra responded, it turned into a kiss more primal, more genuine. All night, the storm ravaged, and eventually, the shadow stalkers gave up, unable to penetrate the shelter's barriers. Yet inside, Hunter and Sierra discovered that some fortifications are best torn down, some borders meant to be redrawn. Dawn's initial rays broke through the shelter's narrow window, painting its interior in hues of crimson and gold. Hunter awoke first, his combat instincts immediately evaluating their situation. The storm had passed, leaving an uneasy calm punctuated only by Sierra's gentle breathing. She lay cold at his side, her silver hair fanned across his chest like strands of starlight. The events of the night felt nearly unreal, but the heat of her body pressed at his was undeniably real. That intimate union had been both gentle and fierce, perfectly reflecting their dual nature. Hunter carefully slid free, not wanting to rouse her, then checked the shelter's systems. The primary display flickered intermittently, and static hissed through the comm. The storm had inflicted heavier damage than he'd hoped. "Something's wrong," came Sierra's soft voice, still thick with slumber. Turning, he found her gazing at him, violet eyes luminous in the morning glow. She covered herself with his abandoned jacket, stirring something instinctive in him. "Comm systems are down," he answered, forcing himself to focus on the technical side. Storm must have hit them worse than it did the other modules. Sierra stood smoothly, examining the damaged unit. Her proximity stirred a memory of their shared moments the previous night. She seemed aware of his thoughts, a mischievous smile on her lips. "Main array's completely dead," she confirmed, her hands moving deftly over the console. "We can't contact either side now." "That's potentially a problem," Hunter mused, though a part of him felt oddly relieved to be momentarily off-grid. "Can we fix it?" "Maybe," she said, facing him so closely that their armor nearly touched. "But we'll need certain parts from my vehicle. And there might still be stalkers out there." Hunter smirked, that blend of confidence and predator shining through. A morning meal and a short hunt. Ideal. They readied themselves rapidly, falling into an easy pattern as though they'd partnered for months rather than hours. Hunter noticed how Sierra's motions mirrored his own, calm, precise, lethal. Their night together had forged something beyond raw desire, a bond deeper than species differences. About last night, Sierra started as they geared up. "No regrets?" Hunter asked, fastening his armor. "Only regret is that it needed a storm and a pack of stalkers for it to happen." Her grin was both alluring and provocative. "Though I'll admit, Watching you take down those beasts was quite stirring." Hunter laughed, the low sound echoing. "Had I known slaying top-tier predators was such a good courting strategy, I would have tried it sooner." Exiting the shelter warily, weapons ready, they took in the storm's devastation. Fallen vegetation littered the ground, and the acid rain had etched bizarre patterns into the bare stone. "The stalkers likely went higher during the downpour," Sierra explained, leading him toward her transport. "But they'll return once they catch our scent again." "Let them," Hunter replied with unwavering conviction. After last night, he felt unstoppable. Plenty of freezer space left. They arrived at the transport unchallenged, but the scene was grim. Debris partly buried it, and several outer panels had been eaten away by the corrosive rainfall. "This will take longer than we'd hoped," Sierra admitted, assessing the damage. "Parts we need are under all that." Hunter was preparing to respond when a recognizable growl echoed across the clearing. 3 shadow stalkers stepped from the foliage, obsidian scales shining in the morning rays. "I'll handle them," Hunter said, drawing his arsenal. "You retrieve those components." Sierra bristled, her own weapons at the ready. "I might not be able to solo one, but I can contribute." They attacked in flawless harmony, the pair. Where he moved with raw, aggressive force, she moved with an almost balletic precision. They complemented each other seamlessly, fighting as though they'd trained side by side for years. Hunter downed the first beast with a savage blend of plasma blasts and blade strikes, while Sierra's pinpoint shots kept the others at bay. The struggle was swift but harsh, culminating in 3 more Shadow Stalker corpses, an addition to Hunter's tally. That was, Sierra paused, chest heaving, eyes gleaming with adrenaline, and something more primal, astonishing. Hunter pulled her in, armor colliding with a metallic clown. "You're astonishing," he growled, kissing her with a fierceness tasting of triumph and blood. Ultimately, they salvaged the parts needed, though the job took longer than necessary due to repeated intervals spent indulging their deepening attraction. By midday, they returned to the shelter to begin restoring the communication link. "You know," Sierra said while they worked, her hands sometimes brushing his in a way that felt anything but accidental. "I expected to find a crude alien barely scraping by on our world when I was assigned to you." Hunter raised a brow. "But instead, I discovered a man who treats our fiercest predator like a pantry item, who fights like a living weapon, and who," she paused, her violet eyes darkening, "who's making me rethink everything I believed about humans. A good thing, an exciting thing." She leaned closer, her body gliding perfectly against his. "Though I remain slightly unconvinced about your culinary habits." Hunter chuckled, bringing her nearer. "All right, once we fix the comms, I'll cook you a real Shadow Stalker steak, assuming you dare. Given what we've shared, I suspect I can handle anything you propose." The undertone was not lost on either of them. As they toiled over the transmitter, their touches lingered, their gazes conveyed deeper intentions, and the air practically hummed with the unspoken. The communication system came alive with crackling static, just as Hunter put the final touches on their meal. The smell of roasted Shadow Stalker meat permeated the shelter, merged with the exotic seasonings he brought from Earth. Sierra watched him cook with fascination and open desire, still amazed at how he handled everything about these lethal creatures so effortlessly. An urgent transmission from the Nixon settlement cut across their closeness like a blazing plasma shot. "Lieutenant Knight," a tense male voice declared, "situation emergent. A huge cluster of Shadow Stalkers has encircled the settlement. Our defenses hold for now," but Hunter was already strapping on his gear with brisk efficiency. "Count." "At least 15, the voice replied. "They're behaving strangely, coordinated maneuvers, strategic positioning. It's as if they're learning." Sierra's violet eyes locked with Hunter's blue. "They're adapting. The pack that confronted us yesterday shifted tactics during the fight. Evolution in real time." Hunter mused, verifying his weapons. "They're getting smarter, more organized. Explains why they're hitting the settlement." "Our warriors can't handle that many," Sierra said, voice taut with worry, "especially if they're employing advanced pack strategies." Hunter's grin held the savage edge of a top predator. "Lucky for you, You've got a human who's made a career out of bringing down apex predators. They stocked their vehicles with extra weapons and supplies before heading out. Jake Hunter included something additional, a few large slabs of cooked shadow stalker meat. Seriously? Sierra Knight inquired, lifting an elegant eyebrow. Believe me, Hunter answered, his tone layered with that self-assurance that made her skin tingle. Sometimes the top way to understand your foe is to actually eat them. The journey to the settlement was tense but quick. They traveled in separate transports, remaining in constant contact. Hunter used the drive to discover more about the settlement's defenses and layout, while Sierra found her thoughts wandering repeatedly to recollections of their shared nights. "You're quiet," Hunter remarked over comms. "Are you reconsidering bringing a human to your settlement?" "No," she replied gently. "I'm just thinking how much has shifted since I first spotted you devouring our world's most formidable beast by that fire. Having trouble accepting it all. I'm struggling with all of it. The way you battle, the way you survive, the way you love." She paused, letting that final phrase linger between them. "You've overturned everything I assumed about humans. Is that why you're anxious? Because I rattled your perspective?" "I'm anxious. Anxious because I've never felt like this for anyone. And we're heading into severe danger." Hunter's voice softened. "Hey, I promised you a proper Shadow Stalker dinner date. After this is settled, I plan on making good on that." They arrived at the settlement to discover circumstances worse than the reports had suggested. Indeed, the Shadow Stalkers had refined their tactics, turning the settlement's own fortifications to their advantage. They'd also severed multiple critical areas, including the central power generator. The Nixon commander, a stern-faced male known as Marcus, greeted them with plain relief. His expression morphed into disbelief when Hunter casually offloaded containers filled with cooked Shadow Stalker meat. "Explain the meaning of this," Marcus demanded. "Psychological warfare," Hunter answered with a playful wink at Sierra. "Nothing unsettles an apex predator quite like watching prospective prey feast on their deceased packmates." Before anyone could protest, Hunter proceeded to distribute the meat among the defenders. Several hesitated, but upon seeing Sierra take a nibble, the rest followed. The morale boost was both instantaneous and powerful. "All right," Hunter said, his natural authority carrying through his voice, "let's outline a strategy. They're clever, but they still rely on instinct. We'll turn that instinct against them." As they organized the defense, Sierra observed Hunter. He operated with utter confidence, his mere presence stirring the other soldiers. Whenever he spoke, they listened, their initial doubts dissolving as they recognized how practical his concepts were. "The key," Hunter clarified, "is making them think they're the predators while we're luring them into an ambush. They're accustomed to being top dog. We'll show them what happens when they chase a species that evolved into even fiercer hunters than they are." The plan was audacious, merging Hunter's aggressive human approach with Nixon technology. While readying themselves to carry it out, Sierra pulled him aside. "Be cautious," she whispered, pressing closer. "I've grown strangely attached to having a human who can outperform our apex predators." Hunter's reply was a swift, intense kiss that left them both breathless. "After we wrap this up," he murmured, voice laced with longing, "we'll have a lengthy talk about exactly how fond you've gotten." The ensuing battle would go down in Nixon military annals. Hunter led from the front, his fighting style a seamless fusion of sheer force and strategic brilliance. Even with their adaptive intelligence, the Shadow Stalkers had never contended with anything like him. Sierra fought at his flank, their coordination immaculate. Together they tipped the balance, funneling the pack into meticulously prepared kill zones. Observing the defenders eating Shadow Stalker flesh had delivered the intended psychological blow. The beasts seemed unsettled, their usual boldness rattled. Come nightfall, the remaining stalkers withdrew, leaving several from their pack behind. Hunter quickly assembled crews to handle the carcasses, ensuring no part was squandered. "You've achieved the unthinkable," Marcus admitted later, amid the settlement celebration. "Not just defeating them, but teaching us how to conquer our dread." Hunter shrugged, an arm casually resting around Sierra's waist. "Humans have a long record of converting threatening predators into meals. Sort of our specialty." Festivities stretched deep into the night. Hunter and Sierra quietly slipped away, claiming a private instance in one of the settlement's watchtowers. "So," Hunter said in a low voice, drawing her near, "still can't wrap your head around me snacking on apex predators?" Sierra's laugh was a husky, inviting sound. "I can't wrap my head around many things about you, Jake Hunter, but I'm extremely eager to discover more." From below drifted the sounds of ongoing celebration, but up in that tower, they held their own private victory, adding yet another memorable page to their ever more remarkable tale. The news rippled across Nixon lands like a wildfire, a human warrior who not only fought shadow stalkers, but also consumed them. Within mere days of that triumphant defense, settlements throughout the planet clamored for Hunter's expertise. "They call you the Shadow Slayer," Sierra mentioned, lightly tracing the fresh scar on Hunter's shoulder as they reclined together in his shelter. Morning light tinted her silver hair shades of pink and gold. Hunter laughed, pulling her close. "That's better than some nicknames I had back on Earth, though I prefer how you say my name." "Jake," she purred, illustrating precisely what he meant. "High Command wants you instructing fighters at 3 different settlements. That means traveling for weeks." "I know." He ran his fingers through her hair. "Join me as my liaison, or whatever you'd like to be." Sierra's violet eyes danced with mirth. "I rather enjoy keeping an eye on your back, among other things." High Command cleared their joint mission quicker than expected. Perhaps they realized that the human who transformed the Stalker War needed his chosen partner present. Their first stop was a coastal outpost called Meridian Bay, where the Shadow Stalkers had adapted to stalk the shallows. The local commander, a veteran named Maverick, welcomed them with thinly veiled skepticism. "So," he said, eyeing Hunter's easy stance, "you're the human who turns our nightmares into meals." Hunter's reply was to toss him a bag of dried Shadow Stalker jerky. "Eat it. Nothing helps shake the fear of something quite like making it your dinner." The subsequent training sessions became legend. By Nixon norms, Hunter's methods were unconventional. He taught them to think as predators while hunting predators. Sierra watched proudly as he turned anxious soldiers into determined hunters. "The secret," Hunter clarified to a group of wide-eyed recruits, "is recognizing that humans evolved as persistence hunters. We're not the strongest or quickest, but we're relentless. We learn to chase down creatures far bigger and tougher by outlasting them, outsmarting them." He showed his approach in the field, leading hunt squads that methodically took down shadow stalkers with mounting ease. Observing him in action always kindled a flame within Sierra. The fluid way he carried himself, that unshakable poise in every move. Their nights grew more passionate, their bond more profound. Each successful hunt, every victory over the planet's apex predators, seemed to fuel the flame burning between them. Nixon troops gossiped about their romance, but their efficiency as a pair left little room for criticism. At their next stop, perched high in the mountains, Hunter devised new tactics to handle the altitude-savvy stalkers. He threw himself into the work, pushing the recruits and himself to their upper limits. "You're overdoing it," Sierra commented one evening, rubbing his stiff shoulders. "Even a legendary human hunter needs downtime." "Can't help it," Hunter sighed, leaning into her touch. "Every time I see these monsters threatening your people, I recall that first moment you stared at me like I was deranged for devouring one." "Sometimes I still think you're nuts," she teased, her fingers pressing the spots that made him groan. "But it adds to your charm." Their third assignment led them to the desert outpost Phoenix Point, where the shadow stalkers had adapted to be deadlier still. The heat was punishing, but Hunter recalibrated his strategies, schooling the fighters on how to exploit the harsh environment. One day during training, a young warrior asked, "How do humans do this? How do you conquer fear?" Casting a look at Sierra first, Hunter replied, "We don't conquer it, we embrace it. Fear keeps you alert. You have to make your quarry more terrified of you than you are of it." That evening, gazing at the triple moons from their private room, Sierra finally voiced what had been on her mind. "Our training tour ends next week. Then what?" Hunter drew her onto his lap, eyes a searing blue. "That's up to us. Would you settle for returning to monthly supply runs after all we've experienced?" She traced his face, memorizing each scar. No, I really wouldn't. Excellent, he growled, leaning in for a kiss that left no ambiguity about his feelings. Because I have plans that go well beyond instructing your people to hunt shadow stalkers. Their shared desire that night was particularly fierce, fueled by the reality that their time on this planet had changed them forever. They'd gone far beyond their original roles, the human who feasted on lethal predators, and the alien who couldn't believe it. Afterward, while lying entwined, Sierra mused, "When I first saw you eating that shadow stalker flesh, I was sure you were suicidal or insane. And now I still think you're insane, but in all the right ways." She braced herself on an elbow, silver hair cascading over her shoulders. "You've changed everything. Our perspective on shadow stalkers, on humans, on ourselves." Hunter's smile was tender, yet it retained that aura of danger that had initially fascinated her. "You changed things for me too. I came as an observer to gather intel, but I ended up finding something worth fighting for." Next morning, as they prepped for the day's training, fresh news arrived that would test their new relationship in ways neither foresaw. But that's a tale for another time. The recall order arrived at dawn, just as Hunter was preparing for a new hunting expedition. The transmission was short and non-negotiable. "Lieutenant Hunter, immediate recall to Earth. Transport landing in 48 hours. Mission success recognized. Exemplary performance noted." Hunter read it twice, jaw clenching. Through the shelter window, he saw Sierra demonstrating combat drills to a group of novices. The morning sun made her silver hair glow like starlight, and the sight gave his heart a pang worse than any shadow stalker had. "You're pensive," Sierra commented later, entering their space. She'd sensed his mood during the morning, despite his effort to hide it. "What's happening?" He said nothing, only wrapped her in a rough embrace, his mouth crashing onto hers with an urgency that stole her breath. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead on hers. "Earth's calling me back. The ship lands in 2 days." Sierra froze against him. 2 days? But the training. They've read the updates, they know it works. "They want me to replicate it on other colonial worlds." He stroked her silver hair, memorizing its feel. "They call it a promotion." "When do you return?" Her violet eyes probed his face, already knowing the answer. "It's permanent. They're forming a new unit, Xenopredator Response, and they want me at the helm." Silence fell, heavy with unsaid words. Sierra stepped back, her expression difficult to read. "I see. And what do you want, Jake?" Hunter let out a harsh laugh. "What do I want?" He motioned around them, at the life they'd built. "I want this. Training your warriors, hunting your monsters, making love to you under 3 moons. Then stay," her voice quiet yet insistent. "Go AWOL. That's not the human way." Sierra challenged. "For months, you've taught us to rethink our limits. Maybe it's time you questioned your own." Before he could respond, the settlement alarms blared. They exchanged a glance. They knew that siren, shadow stalkers. Silently shelving the conversation, they geared up in perfect sync, duty coming first. The assault was unlike anything prior. The stalkers had advanced further, exploiting the settlement's fortifications against the inhabitants. But this time, the Nixon fighters, sharpened by Hunter and Sierra's guidance, stood ready. "Exactly what we practiced," Hunter shouted, his voice commanding on the battlefield. "Show them humans aren't alone in being apex predators." The struggle was intense yet controlled. Nixon warriors moved with renewed courage, using Hunter's strategies with lethal results. Sierra fought beside him, so fluidly aligned that it felt telepathic. Observing Sierra dispatch a stalker with techniques he'd shown her, Hunter decided. When the battle wrapped up with a decisive triumph, warriors making good use of the fallen stalkers, Hunter drew Sierra aside. "Come with me," he said abruptly. "To Earth?" "Yes, with me." His gaze blazed. "They want me to instruct others in slaying beasts, sure, but I want my top warrior with me." "Jake," she cautioned, "I'm serious." He clasped her hands. "Earth must see what we've done here. Not only the hunting methods, but also this. Humans and Nixons, side by side, learning from each other, improving each other." "That's bigger than a training program," she murmured. "It's everything," he insisted in a hushed voice. "I'm talking about proving to Earth that humans and Nixons can be more than allies. We can be partners." "In every sense?" Sierra asked, her lips curving. He tugged her close. "Imagine Earth's wildlife. It would make your stalkers look mild. Think of the stories about a Nixon warrior devouring Earth's fiercest predators." Sierra laughed with happiness and anticipation. Now that's something to record. They spent their last days making arrangements, military, personal. The warriors organized a farewell feast, cooking shadow stalker dishes using Hunter's recipes. Tales were told, friendships forged, alliances deepened. In private, Hunter and Sierra indulged each other with renewed longing, as though hoarding enough memories for an entire lifetime. Every brush of skin, every breath, felt more precious, knowing their time here was almost up. On the morning the transport arrived, they stood observing the sunrise. Hunter had made a special breakfast, shadow stalker steaks exactly like that first night she caught him feasting. "Recall how you couldn't believe your eyes?" he asked, slicing into the perfect piece of meat. "I still barely believe it," she confessed, sampling a slice. "The human who turned our nightmares into a meal, who taught us to be predators not prey, who made me fall in love with him." Hunter's heart lurched at her admission. Though both had felt it, these were the first explicit words. "I love you too," he said quietly, prepared to face Earth's reaction. Even your superior's reaction to a Nixon-human bond. His grin had that dangerous aura she adored. "Let them react. We've handled worse." And he added, hugging her tight, "Just wait until they see you kill your first Earth predator. That will hush them." The transport touched down right on schedule, kicking up dust across the landing area. As they made ready to board, Hunter gave a final glance at the settlement he'd come to think of as home. "Prepared to jolt some humans?" he asked, squeezing Sierra's hand. Her violet eyes sparkled mischievously. "Always, although I doubt anything will surpass seeing you devour our apex predator the first time." "Just wait," Hunter promised, guiding her toward their next chapter. Earth has no idea what's in store. Earth's military leadership wasn't prepared for Sierra. They had expected Hunter back with new strategies, thorough logs, maybe a few showy trophies. Instead, he brought along a fierce Nixon fighter whose lethal grace and proud battle scars equaled any human veterans. Silence filled the debrief room as they arrived. Hunter, dressed in his formal Earth uniform, smirked at the officers' stunned reactions. Sierra wore her traditional Nixon armor, modified with Earth combat plating, a perfect symbol of their merged cultures. "Gentlemen," Hunter said to the panel of senior officers, "meet Lieutenant Sierra Knight, my partner and co-developer of our Xeno-Predator response tactics." "Partner?" General Thompson repeated, eyebrows raised. "That detail wasn't in your original mission, Lieutenant Hunter." "Nor was reinventing the Nixon approach to apex predators," Hunter countered smoothly. "Sometimes the best achievements stem from the unexpected." Sierra stepped forward, her violet eyes sweeping the room like a hunter assessing her surroundings. Perhaps a live demonstration would speak better than paperwork. The Australian outback served as an ideal proving ground. Earth's fiercest wildlife seemed mild compared to shadow stalkers, but it sufficed for the demonstration. Hunter watched with pride as Sierra tracked, stalked, and eliminated a pack of feral dingoes terrorizing a local region. Her every motion was artistry, Nixon agility woven with the lessons Hunter had taught her. "Incredible," Colonel Davis admitted, surveying through binoculars. "But dingoes are nothing like shadow stalkers." "No," Hunter concurred, "they aren't, which is why we brought this." He pointed to a sealed container transported from the Nixon world. The display that followed became the stuff of legend in Earth's military circles. Together, Hunter and Sierra, moving as one, exhibited precisely how they'd refined their techniques against shadow stalkers. The holo record would later become mandatory viewing for all new Xeno-Predator response recruits. That evening, in their private quarters on the base, Sierra prepared dinner. Earth beef seasoned with spices from both planets. "They're still reeling," she observed, watching Hunter remove the stiff uniform. Earth's mighty armed forces rattled by a human-Nixon partnership. Hunter pulled her in, savoring the exotic scent that had first drawn him on the Nixon world. Wait until they see what's next. Sierra's fingers glided over the familiar scars on his chest. And what would that be? Well, he said, taking a small object from his pocket. I was thinking we could make our alliance official according to both Earth and Nixon traditions. The ring he revealed was unlike any from either world, crafted from symbolic materials and set with gems that honored both cultures. Sierra's violet eyes lit up, reminiscent of the day she first met him. You're asking me to marry you? Hunter's blue eyes gleamed with the confidence she had always admired. Unless you're nervous about exploring Earth's wildest frontiers with me for the rest of our lives. Her response and unhesitating kiss erased all doubts. Over the following months, the Xeno-Predator Response Unit grew at a remarkable pace. Joint teams of human and Nixon forces drilled side by side, ready for the most challenging threats in the galaxy. Hunter and Sierra's wedding became a powerful symbol of this success. A grand celebration uniting foods and customs from both worlds, including a uniquely prepared Shadow Stalker dish that intrigued the human guests. Their honeymoon astonished local authorities when they chose to spend it venturing into Earth's most untamed regions. Sierra's first encounter with a saltwater crocodile even ended in her adapting its preparation Nixon style, a display of skill that made Hunter love her all the more. A year after their arrival on Earth, they stood together on a cliff by the ocean. The lowering sun illuminated the sky with hues reminding them of that first campfire they had shared. Still feels surreal, doesn't it? Hunter said, gently drawing her against him. Which part? Sierra leaned back contentedly. A human who challenges apex creatures, who showed my people how to face our greatest fears, or the man who convinced Earth's leadership to embrace a Nixon among their ranks? All of it, he whispered, placing a light kiss on her neck. Every improbable choice that brought us here. Nothing is impossible, she answered, pivoting in his arms so her violet gaze met his blue. You taught me that humans might not be the largest or the fastest in the galaxy, but you are by far the most unpredictable. Speaking of surprises, Hunter added with a playful grin, just wait until you find out what's on the menu tonight. Don't tell me you actually found a Shadow Stalker on Earth, Sierra teased. Even better. He took her hand and guided her toward their home. I came up with a way to serve Shadow Stalker meat alongside Earth's hottest peppers. I want to show you why humans are apparently the only species willing to handle such spicy flavors. Sierra laughed, her voice dancing on the breeze. You never stop astounding me. That's why you adore me, he joked. No, she corrected softly, holding him closer. I adore you because you turn impossibilities into everyday victories. You transformed what my people feared most into a source of strength, and you made our differences into something extraordinary. Walking home under the glow of sunset, they remembered the astonishing moment that started it all, a human calmly sampling the most formidable creature from her world. No one could have predicted how that single scene would lead to this life they shared. Both felt grateful for every step along their unforeseen journey. And somewhere in the galaxy, new rumors were sprouting. Stories of a human and a Nixon hunting side by side, turning fear into triumph, proving that love can truly unite worlds.